Hello, and welcome to another episode of Colorectal Cancer Canada's Tush Talks. Colorectal Cancer Canada is the nation's leading colorectal cancer not-for-profit patient group, and Tush Talks are our way of providing important perspectives in an accessible way to colorectal cancer patients, their family, caregivers, and whoever else is interested. My name is Carl Bindman. I'm your host. And for today's episode, to talk about caregiving, we have Reanna Katz, an undergraduate student at Windsor University, to talk about her experience as a caregiver. Reanna, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Carl. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Well, we're very happy to have you. And I think you're a wonderful person to have on to talk about this because your experience is one that I think people don't often think about when they think about caregivers. They don't think about young people. So do you want to tell me about kind of just an overview of your experience caregiving?
Yeah, absolutely. So being a young caregiver is something that I definitely didn't expect, didn't plan at all in my entire life. It's something that kind of just came out of nowhere. It's not something that I chose or that I was ready for. And suddenly when it happened, my life changed in an instant. It was something that I had to adapt to on a daily basis. I had to overcome several challenges that came along with it, but every day was a new step. Every day was a new journey, and every day was just a learning success. And it was just continuing on every single day, open-minded, being ready to be there to help out someone.
Yeah. Who were you caregiving for?
Caregiving for my grandfather,
What was your grandfather's name?
George.
George. And so when did you begin serving as a caregiver for George?
So it started back in 2021 when he actually originally got diagnosed with colon cancer. I was living at home at the time and I was taking care of him, and we started to notice a bunch of symptoms that he had of the weight loss. And we noticed something was wrong very quickly, and we did a lot of testing. We went to the doctors to determine what it could be. He did the colon test screening, and it did come back positive. And therefore, later on, a few months later, we did a colonoscopy where we determined he was at a stage 2 of cancer. And from there, that's where I started my caregiving journey, starting when he first got diagnosed with the cancer, and then going into his treatments, which he did radiation treatments, and then finally into his final stages into palliative care.
Yeah. And I am sorry for your loss. And you said that we also kind of began serving as caregivers. Who was the we in that story for you?
Yeah, it was my close family. So it was my mom, my dad, and my grandmother.
Yeah. How was that to have kind of like this multi-generational team, if you will, all working together?
It was very different. We all have different experiences in terms of taking care of somebody. My grandparents were immigrants from Romania, so they have their different side of how to take care of people. Whereas myself and my mom and my dad, we kind of learned here how to take care of people in our own way. So it was interesting to see that they took some of their traditions from back home to take care of my grandfather here, in particular my grandmother, really stepping up and taking on that role of taking care of my grandfather. Whereas myself, I would take more of the traditional role, like today, that we've learned from our nurses, our doctors, our support people on how to take care of patients. So it was very interesting to learn the differences between each generation, but all together, all of us coming together really helped.
Yeah. What were some of those differences?
I think it was just the main thing of making traditional foods to help him in terms of taking care of him as well, who was in charge of taking care of him, what they were doing. Myself, I was more in charge of the medications, administering the medications for him in terms of giving him via his ports, whereas my grandmother and my mother, they were unable to, and they obviously with nerves as well. So I was in charge of that, whereas they were in charge of more of taking care of him, bathing him, changing him, and all that.
Yeah. You said that like the sort of things that nurses and doctors learn, is that something that you do in like your studies?
No, it was actually something that I was just learning as we were going on with his whole journey. I did learn, about certain things, about muscles, tissues, how insertions work and all of that. But in terms of how to administer medications, when to give him the proper doses, I was not learning any of that during my education.
Yeah, that's something that I think is really interesting about like the caregiving experience is that you kind of become in a way a medical practitioner like an on-call nurse without being a nurse in a way. What did
Yeah.
that do for your relationship like with your grandfather?
Yeah. Um, Already my grandfather and I had a very, very close relationship to start with. We lived right down the street from one another, so I'd be visiting him every single day. We always had a really close relationship growing up from such a young age until now. And I think taking on this role and responsibility of being a caregiver to him really opened up our relationship to the fullest of extent, where he was so appreciative and so thankful for everything that I was doing for him. And it was something not only for him to recognize, but for my family to recognize that I'm taking the step moving forward to help take care of my grandfather. Not many young people like myself who have that close of a relationship with their grandparents are able to say, I was there with them to take care of them. I was there to help them through their final journey. And I had such the honor to do this, to be with him right from the beginning until the very end. So overall, my relationship with him, we bonded over the stuff like this. And I kept telling him, this is what I want to do in the near future. What I'm doing with you, taking care of you, is how I want to help others in the future.
Yeah, and you're doing, we spoke earlier and you mentioned that you were doing like beginning research into lupus work, right? Yeah. How like was it for you then to have that feeling with your family as well, like all working together?
It was a lot. You know, we every family dynamic is very different. And for us, we experience good things and bad things overall coming together. With the issues we've had in the past, with my mom being diagnosed with lupus, until now, it was a very different perspective. I was a young age, my brother was a young age, so we weren't really there to be that caregiver for my mom, whereas my grandmother and my dad took that role and responsibility of taking care of her. Whereas this time, now the tables have turned where I'm a lot older, I'm able to take care of that caregiving responsibility, as well as my brother, as well, taking care of him as well. So definitely the roles have reversed, but at the same time with our family dynamic, it has changed over time. We've had some amazing things where we can come together, support one another, and lean on one another as well in times where we needed to.
Yeah, building like resilience almost. Yeah.
Yes.
You had mentioned some challenges, and however much you're comfortable getting into it, I am curious what they were in the process, and sort of maybe as a follow up when we get there of like what you did to deal with them.
Mhm. So, like I mentioned, being, a young caregiver comes with multiple challenges, especially with myself at the time of all of this. I was a full-time student in the summer, taking summer courses. I had a part-time job as well as practically full-time caregiving. And I think the main challenge was for me was that isolation feeling. While my friends were out, at beaches, on vacations, out together, they were enjoying their summer, whereas I felt so isolated to the point where I feel like no one could understand me. Being so young, taking care of all these responsibilities, and having someone's life in my hands that I'm taking care of and taking on that responsibility. So I think that was the biggest issue, is feeling that isolation, as well as my family members as well. We didn't feel like we had a big enough support system around us in terms of other family members. We were very isolated, all of us together. And I think that was the most challenging thing, where we were focusing more on making appointments, taking care of his medications, when doctors were coming in and out of the house, whereas we saw other families, enjoying their lives, enjoying their vacations, enjoying their summer. So I think overall, the main challenge was my mental health overall and my physical health as well. I was sleeping. My grandfather had a hospital bed in our living room. And at the time, he was unable to be moving around. So myself and my grandmother, even my father, we took turns sleeping on the couch. And I slept on the couch for the past 2 weeks up until his final passing. And I felt every single day was a challenge. Maybe some days I feel like I didn't do enough, or I could be doing so much more. And it was that physical exhaustion, but also that mental exhaustion, where he was also suffering with dementia at the same time too. So having to readdress to him and, tell him, reassure her that it's going to be okay. that, we're taking it day by day and just, reminding him of the same things over and over again. It took a huge toll on myself, but every single day I had to remind myself, he's depending on me. He needs me right now. And I think that was the biggest challenge, was being able to put others, especially him, before myself.
Yeah, it's hard. It is hard. Um, and I think that there's an impulse, I mean, in everyday life for people to downplay how hard the hard things they do are, but it is not an easy thing to do. And I think acknowledging that and recognizing that is important. So thank you for sharing a little bit about that. On the point of isolation and not having enough support, or feeling like you didn't have enough support, how did you navigate that individually?
Mhm. So at the time of his journey, I did have some friends, my relationship as well with my boyfriend. He was very close with my family. The same thing with my brother's girlfriend. She's very close to our family. So we reached out to them to ask for some support when we needed to. They were always there for us. They came over to check on our family, spent a few days with us, which was really nice to help give us a little bit of a break and bring some happiness and joy into the household itself. And overall, even after the whole experience of isolation, now following his passing, reaching out to counseling services outside of it, we really connected with our church, members of our church during this whole time. So we reached out to them. They came out for us, and they were there to help support us through everything. They were there through every step of the journey that they can be. And especially now during after his passing, reaching out to counseling services to be there to help me as an individual, not only to get through, the schooling portion, but how can I deal with grief after his passing?
Yeah, and I think it's so good to know, like, if you reach out, there are resources, there are people. Like, feeling alone is not the same thing as being alone. And I think, yeah, it's a good reminder. Kind of on that point, like, the what we're doing here, talking about it and sort of speaking openly about the costs, the opportunities, the feelings that come about. Why is this something that you want to do?
Mhm. Overall, really looking back at caregiving as a whole, I realize how much it has taught me the importance of taking on a responsibility, the resilience, and the patience I have had. And I think it's really important to be teaching others as well the same thing. You might have someone that's maybe my age going through the same thing as well, caregiving for someone else, or whether that's a family member, a friend, even a close relative, taking on that responsibility and that role of taking care of someone else. And I think it's really important to talk more about it, and to ensure that you aren't alone, that this isn't a journey that you are taking alone. It might feel like it in the moment where you feel that isolation. You feel like no one can understand you, especially as a young person taking on this role. You feel like no one understands you, no one experiences what you're going through. And I think it's really important, and why I'm here today is to say that it's okay, that we understand you and we are here for you. There's a community of all of us that are dealing with the same thing. And maybe, like myself in the beginning, I wasn't someone to go and talk about this situation because I was nervous. I was afraid of what people would say or think about my situation. And that wasn't something that I really felt comfortable about opening up in the beginning. But overall, after this whole experience, it really opened my eyes to say that there are people like me out there who are suffering and dealing with the same thing. And I want everybody to know that they are not alone, that this journey isn't a one person journey. It's a whole community, and we are all here together to support one another.
Yeah, it reminds me of in my student journalist days, I went to a conference and attended a talk by an activist and a journalist of disability journalism. And he said something that really stuck with me, which is that everybody is able-bodied for now, temporarily. And I think, like, it's a good reminder that these networks exist and that solidarity is important, not necessarily because you need it now, but because down the line you probably will. And knowing that other people will experience this and other people will be able to be resources to you is good, dare I say. Um, you're studying biomedical science, and is this something that sort of you landed on because of your time being a caregiver?
No, it actually was something that I decided to a little bit early on. Like I mentioned earlier, my mom has lupus. She was diagnosed with it when I was 4 years old. And I think over time, over that, I really started to have a love for science, specifically healthcare. My philosophy every single time when people ask me why I want to become a doctor is I saw how the doctors, the nurses, social workers were taking care of my mom during that time. Not only her physical needs, but also the family as well. We have really close doctors, amazing doctors, support workers who were there for not only her, but for my family every step of the way, and who are still here with us to this day, keeping in contact with us. We go to those doctor's appointments to ensure she's okay. And they are always very supportive of my family and I. And I've always said, I want to be that type of doctor one day. I want to make a difference on families, just like those doctors made a difference, not only in helping my mom and saving her life, but also the impact that they made on my family and I.
Yeah. And kind of on a similar question of like the turn to the future, how are you finding your no longer being a caregiver, like adjusting to kind of the non-crisis mode of life?
I will say I still feel like I'm in a crisis mode. Um, After the few months since his passing, I felt my body coming back to life a little bit. I was going through sleep deprivation. I was extremely tired, not taking care of my well being and of myself. And at the time, I was so cautious of everything and everyone. And still to this day, with my grandmother now being a widow, I'm so cautious about her and her well being. And I still feel like nowadays I take on this caregiver role still, even after his passing, where I'm making sure that my family members are okay, in particular my grandmother, because this is extremely hard for her. She was with him for over 60 years. They lived pretty much their whole life together. They immigrated into Canada and started our family here. So, because of them, this is everything that has happened. And I still take on that caregiving role, like I said, not only to her, but also to my family members and my friends as well. So although I'm not going through that sleep deprivation anymore and not taking care of myself, I still am very cautious and aware of things that are going on, even still being 3 hours away from home. I'm still making sure, calling every single day, that they're okay, and if they need anything from me, that I can help and support them as much as I can. So I still, even after passing, I still maintain that caregiving role.
So it sounds like there is something of a balance to be found in like there's a way to show care for people and support them, but also trying to protect yourself and protect your energy. And where do you feel like that lives for you now?
I think the biggest thing for me that has helped me through balancing is my counseling. Um, I, in the beginning, I didn't think I needed counseling. I thought this is something I could do on my own. Um, Being busy with school, the new semester, the new year, I knew I had a very heavy course load to look forward to. But at the same time, too, dealing coming into the new school year following a death in that family. So it was a very hard balance. And it was hard for me to compromise everything together. But ultimately, I think the biggest thing for me was reaching out and going to counseling. I was very apprehensive about it. It's not something that, in our family we normally do. We talk about our feelings amongst each other, but not really outside to people. And I think it was a big step for me as an individual and as a student to say, I think I'm at my breaking point where I need the extra help from someone else who's not a family member, who's not a friend, who's a, in terms a complete stranger, if you want to say, who has that professional background and that professional education to help me out. Um, and I think reaching out to them helped with the balance of taking on school, taking on all extracurriculars with workload, and on top of that, being able to balance the caregiving back at home, as well as now taking care of myself, setting needs for myself as well.
Yeah. It's really, I think your story highlights something for me that I feel quite strongly, which is like society is kind of just a chain of caregiving. You know, it's just one person taking care of another person, taking care of another person, taking care of another person. And talking about it makes it visible. And like you mentioned how you're in school, and I'm always curious how, like, you know, your community was able to sort of rally and help you out through your church and through your friends. Was your educational context also able to make accommodations for your situation? No?
Unfortunately, not, which is obviously really unfortunate. There are some accommodations that the school will do if a passing has occurred during the time of the school year. When I was in the summer courses, I did appeal for summer grades coming into September because of still grieving everything that is going on and then undergoing the counseling services. But unfortunately, I was denied those actions due to not having enough documentation or support for that. So that was the only unfortunate thing. But I think overall, the school can help in terms of deferrals or appeals if needed during a time like this.
Yeah. But that also certainly speaks to, I think, the need to talk about this sort of thing publicly, where it's like you never know what students are going through. And it seems to me like, you know, education is about supporting and helping young people grow, and maybe you should accommodate them when they have needs. Something that stood out to me in your story is kind of like the length of time that caregiving can take, because you said it was 2021 to 2024 your role, and how did your sort of experience change as time went on, as you were kind of practicing being a caregiver?
Mhm. In the beginning, I didn't know what to do. You know, as a caregiver, there's no manual, there's no step-by-step instructions on how to be a caregiver. There's resources that can help you, you know, talk to a loved one about caregiving or being there for someone, but I didn't know. I was never educated, especially in terms of what colon cancer was. My family and we didn't have any close relatives or family members that underwent any cancer treatments or process or journey. So this was a very new process for all of us. In the beginning, it was just more out getting opinions from not just one doctor, but several doctors as well, and then talking amongst each other as a family as a whole. So in the beginning, I think as a caregiver, we were frantic. We didn't know what to do, specifically myself. I didn't know what to do. I'm a young age, a young student. What would a student know at this age about cancers in particular or treatments and everything going on? In that moment, as being a caregiver, my main priority was how can I be there for my grandfather right now? How can I be able to translate this to him, as his first language wasn't English, it was Romanian. So how can I be there to translate everything going on for him? As months went on and we found out different types of treatments that we needed, we found a particular doctor that we liked. He spoke our native language and we felt very comfortable. And we thought, okay, this is perfect timing for him to explain to us what our options would be. And from here, myself, I felt a little relieved, knowing, okay, here's our options for treatment moving forward, whether that was radiation, cancer, or radiation or surgery was the two options that we had. From there, every single day was a new learning experience. I was getting more and more educated, more about what cancer this was, the stages of it, the process, how it evolved, everything like that, the certain treatments. Leading up to the final moments, the final weeks, I think that was the biggest learning curve for me. Getting the support and care from the palliative care team. We had nurses coming in every single day, and they would show myself and my family members as well how to properly administer medications via a port or through a needle. And I took on that role and responsibility of administering every medication there was. And from that point, I really understood what caregiving meant to me then, was taking care of that person till their final stages of life, making sure that they're comfortable. I was well educated enough on what colon cancer was, not to the certain extent, but I did know the basics of what this cancer was. I did more research, about the medications they were offering, why they were giving him those medications a little bit more in depth, really connecting with the nurses, with the doctors, opening up a little bit to understand why they are doing certain things, just opening up as much as I can. And I think the final stage was realizing that as a caregiver, yes, in the beginning, I was frantic, I was worried, I didn't know what to do. But in the end, following all these years of caregiving, that I felt a sense of relief, a little bit of sense of success, that I did what I could until the very final end of his journey. And I just felt passionate about it. I felt happy that I knew what I was doing. There were some days where I really clearly did not know what I was doing, or maybe I just felt very unsure of what I was doing. But I felt overall in the end, as long as he was comfortable, that's what made me feel happy in life. And that's what made me keep going every single day to make sure that he was okay. So from the beginning of caregiving, frantic, hectic, did not know what I was doing till the very final end, where I felt, okay, I know what I'm doing. Let me continue it moving forward. How can I learn more and more every single day?
That's very nice. I think I'm touched. um, the the thesis that I think is emerging from our conversation is just that information is so important, either for yourself, for other people, knowing what you're doing, being able to know you're not alone, sharing. It seems to be all just kind of information. Knowing is key. Does that feel true?
Yes.
Right on. A question that I have for you that's kind of maybe beside what we've been talking about, but not so beside, is I actually don't know how you know about Colorectal Cancer Canada. How do you?
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned this. So, a little bit of a backstory how I got into it. I was a part last year in my winter semester. I was a part of a cancer research class at the university, and we had a bunch of members come in within the area, doctors, social workers. We had members of a We Spark community, which is a big research group who come in and talk about their experiences. And there was one lady in particular who gave an amazing presentation about fundraising in general, hosting initiatives and events within the Windsor region, Essex, and what she has done to raise awareness for her daughter who is dealing with her own journey. And to me, that really set off a spark that I wanted to do something now after everything that I've been through. So, with that being said, during that class, we had a social media campaign that we had to do. We had to base it off of a type of cancer if we wanted to, the role of a caregiver, all of that. It was kind of our decision. We can make it however we want. And it was a social media campaign for the month. And you had to pick different templates for Instagram, Twitter, all of that. And I chose my topic on colorectal cancer. And I did a lot of my research under the Colorectal Cancer Canada website. And from there, I got a lot of information that I personally didn't even know about, even at the beginning of my caregiving journey, that I didn't even know that this website was a thing, in all fairness. And after researching it a little bit more and getting awesome, great topics, facts from the website, I went a little bit deeper into it and noticed, how can I get involved? And I think that's what really sparked a light in me, that after everything that I've gone through, how can I continue his light? How can I continue burning his light? Because that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to leave a legacy behind. And I think his legacy was left through me to continue it on. And that's what I did. And I signed up to become an ambassador, got in touch with someone right away. And from there, I even noticed a lot of people's stories, caregiving stories, patient stories, even just family stories. Just knowing that in that moment of time, I felt isolated. I felt no one understood me. Maybe no one, underwent what I went through. After reading all these stories, looking at all those stories and really taking the time to acknowledge that this person wrote their story, their personal story, to share with others made me feel so comforting. And it warmed my heart to see that I know I'm not alone, that there's other people around me who are also dealing with the same thing, and there's a greater community out there.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to do a little plug for CCC, but I think you've done a better one than I could have. I will actually just add, while we're on the topic, that kind of in recent years, CCC has been making a push to be doing more outreach to caregivers. Kind of our core mission is for patients, caregivers, survivors, and their families. And the one of the ways that we're doing that is we have a patient group, like a support group for caregivers. So I'll address that to the audience, is that we have a support group for caregivers. It meets every month. If that's a resource that you could use or that you think would be helpful in your journey, please reach out. It's easy to access. Just go to our website. It's there, colorectalcancercanada.com. And also for individual support, if you want to just talk to somebody, get the kind of resources that Reanna said were very helpful to her, you can go to our website or reach out to support at colorectalcancercanada.com. Reanna, before we go, I just want to ask you if there's anything that we didn't get to talk about that you really want to share, or that a question that you wish you had been asked.
No, I think overall the importance is really just looking back at how much caregiving has really changed myself as a whole, not only, as a caregiver, but overall as a person as well. Um, this is why I'm here today to talk about my journey, to talk about my story, to really show to people that we're all in this together, no matter what. There is a big community of us who are right behind you every step of the way. You may feel isolated. You may feel alone. You may feel like you're not doing good enough. And we're all there for you. We understand. I understand you completely, especially students who maybe, aren't sharing their stories right now. And that's okay. Maybe that's something they want to keep to themselves. But to know that there are people out there like myself dealing with school and being a caregiver, that we are here. I am here. I hear you. I see you. And that we're all here to support you every step of your journey.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Reanna. And thank you for being here and for this conversation. I had a wonderful time. And I hope that you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You as well.